The sun had just begun to rise over the quiet fields of the countryside, casting a golden light across rows of corn and patches of green pastures. The air smelled of fresh earth and the faint scent of morning dew, and the small town nearby was slowly waking up. Birds chirped in the distance, and a few early risers could be seen walking along dusty roads. On one such road, a rumbling sound broke the calm. A weathered pickup truck, its paint faded from years of hard work, kicked up dust as it rolled along. Behind the wheel sat the black farmer, a man in his late 40s with a determined look in his eyes. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, but his posture was calm, almost regal. This was no ordinary day for him, and no ordinary trip either. The farmer had been planning this moment for weeks. People in the town knew him as someone who never gave up and who had big dreams, but even they would have found today's plan unbelievable. His mind was focused on one thing: acquiring 12 brand new John Deere tractors in a single day. Just saying the words out loud made him smile slightly. It sounded impossible, and perhaps it was, but that never stopped him. The thought of walking into the dealership and asking for such a massive number of tractors thrilled him. He imagined the dealer's reaction, the laughter, the whispers among the employees, and it gave him a strange kind of satisfaction. For the farmer, this wasn't just about owning tractors, it was about proving something to himself and to everyone who doubted him. As he drove, memories of the past few years flashed through his mind. His farm had grown slowly, piece by piece. He had worked tirelessly from dawn to dusk, repairing broken equipment, planting seeds in the scorching sun, and learning everything about farming that books could never teach. His old tractors were worn out, breaking down at the worst possible times. He remembered the frustration of watching a crop suffer because a machine failed at a critical moment. That frustration had fueled his determination to change things. Today, he would take a bold step forward, a step that no one else in his town would dare to imagine. By the time he reached the dealership, the sun was higher in the sky, and the streets were beginning to fill with life. Small shops opened their doors, children ran around on the sidewalks, and the occasional car passed by, honking softly. The dealership itself was a large, shiny building, with rows of tractors lined up like soldiers ready for inspection. The paint gleamed, the tires looked brand new, and the smell of fresh machinery filled the air. Employees were busy cleaning tractors, moving paperwork, and chatting casually. They had no idea that a man with a very unusual request was about to walk through those doors. The farmer parked his truck and stepped out, taking a deep breath. He adjusted his cap, wiped a bit of dust off his sleeves, and walked toward the entrance with a steady pace. Every step he took seemed to draw the attention of a few onlookers. There was something in his demeanor, a quiet confidence, that made people notice him without even realizing it. He entered the building, and the faint sound of the doorbell announced his arrival. Inside, the dealer, a man who had seen countless customers over the years, glanced up from his desk. He had no idea what was about to hit him. The farmer cleared his throat, looked the dealer directly in the eye, and spoke with calm authority, "I want 12 John Deeres today." The dealer blinked. He laughed at first, thinking it must be a joke. 12 tractors in a single day? Who could even imagine such a thing? He looked around at his employees, who were now staring at the farmer with a mix of curiosity and disbelief. The farmer did not smile. He repeated his request, more firmly this time, as if to make sure there was no misunderstanding. The dealer's laughter faded slowly, replaced by a strange mix of skepticism and curiosity. There was something about this man, his determination, and the seriousness in his voice that made the dealer pause and think. Maybe, just maybe, this was not a normal request, but a challenge the farmer intended to make reality. Meanwhile, outside, a few neighbors noticed the unusual gathering at the dealership. Rumors began to spread instantly. A local farmer was asking for 12 tractors. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others whispered excitedly, and a few couldn't resist going over to see for themselves. The farmer, standing tall amidst the whispers and stares, felt a surge of pride. Today was more than a transaction, it was a statement. He wasn't just a farmer looking for machinery. He was a man with a vision, someone willing to take risks, and someone who refused to be limited by ordinary expectations. The morning passed slowly, but the excitement in the dealership had only begun. Employees whispered among themselves, some skeptical, some entertained, and others genuinely intrigued. The farmer remained calm, waiting patiently for the dealer's response, ready to make the impossible happen. Little did anyone know, this day would soon become a story told for years, one that would start with a bold statement, a weathered pickup, and a man who dared to dream bigger than anyone thought possible. The farmer stepped into the dealership with a quiet confidence that immediately caught everyone's attention. The polished floors reflected the morning sunlight, bouncing off the shiny green and yellow tractors lined up in neat rows. Employees paused mid-task, glancing curiously at the man who walked in with such determination. He was a familiar face in the town, but today, he carried an air of purpose that was impossible to ignore. He approached the dealer's desk slowly, each step deliberate, as if the ground itself knew that something extraordinary was about to happen. When he finally reached the dealer, he placed his hands lightly on the edge of the desk, leaned in slightly, and looked him straight in the eye. "I want 12 John Deeres today," he said, his voice calm but firm. There was no hesitation, no awkwardness, no apology for the audacity of his request. It was a statement, not a question. The dealer froze for a moment, his pen hovering above a stack of papers, unsure whether he had heard correctly. 12 tractors in a single day. It sounded impossible, laughable even. The dealer's first reaction was laughter. He let out a short, incredulous chuckle, shaking his head in disbelief. 12. "Are you serious?" he asked, trying to hide his amusement behind a professional smile. Around him, employees began to glance over their shoulders, intrigued by the conversation. Some whispered quietly, wondering if the farmer had lost his mind. Others smirked, expecting a good story to retell at lunch. But the farmer didn't flinch. His expression remained steady, his eyes unwavering. It was clear he wasn't joking, and he wasn't leaving without making his request heard. "Absolutely," the farmer replied, his tone calm yet commanding. "I need 12 tractors. All today. I'm prepared, and I have the plan to make it happen." His words were precise, leaving no room for doubt. He didn't explain why just yet, there was no need. Confidence was his currency, and he knew it. The dealer, still trying to process what he had just heard, leaned back in his chair. He had handled large orders before, but never anything like this. The sheer scale of the request seemed impossible. Delivering 12 tractors at once? The logistics alone were mind-boggling. As the farmer waited, employees started asking questions under their breath. "Who even needs 12 tractors at the same time?" one of them whispered. Another shrugged, half amused, half curious. The dealer, recovering from his initial shock, tried to reason with the man. "Sir, I think you might be misunderstanding. We can get tractors, of course, but 12 in a single day. That's not really feasible. We have deliveries scheduled, paperwork to complete, and the machines are spread across different locations." He paused, hoping the farmer would see the impossibility and lower his demand. But the farmer simply nodded, as if he had already accounted for every obstacle. "I understand the challenges," he said calmly. "I've planned for that. I've arranged transport, and I'm ready to handle everything necessary. I didn't come here to argue about possibility. I came to make it happen." There was something in the way he spoke, quiet, firm, and self-assured, that made the dealer hesitate. This wasn't a customer asking politely, this was a man issuing a challenge, and somehow, the dealer knew that underestimating him could be a mistake. Word of the farmer's boldness began to spread through the dealership. Employees started whispering to one another, exchanging astonished glances. Even the mechanics who had been polishing the tractors looked up, curiosity mixing with disbelief. There was something contagious about the farmer's determination, something that made people start questioning whether the impossible might actually be possible. Some shook their heads, certain this was a joke. Others secretly admired the courage it took to ask for so much so boldly. The dealer cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. "Sir, you're very confident. I'll admit, I admire that. But have you thought about the cost? The logistics? The paperwork?" The farmer smiled faintly. "I've thought about everything. That's why I'm here today, not tomorrow or next week. I know what I want, and I know it can be done. I just need your cooperation." There was no arrogance in his voice, only determination, and that made it even more compelling. For a moment, the dealer leaned back in his chair and studied the man in front of him. This was no ordinary customer. This was someone who didn't just dream, he acted. He didn't beg or plead. He commanded attention with his vision alone. The dealership, normally a place of routine transactions, had transformed into the stage for a bold story, one that was about to unfold in ways nobody could have imagined. The farmer's bold request wasn't just a sentence, it was the spark that would ignite an unforgettable day. The dealer sat back in his chair, staring at the black farmer with a mixture of amusement, confusion, and growing unease. He had seen bold requests before, of course, farmers wanting special orders, companies asking for large deliveries, but never anything like this. 12 tractors in a single day. It sounded absurd, almost impossible. The numbers alone made his head spin. How could one person expect to have that many machines delivered, prepared, and ready for immediate use? Yet, there was something in the farmer's eyes that told him this was not a joke, and that made the dealer pause. For a moment, he wondered if the man had lost his mind. Perhaps he had come to the dealership on a whim, hoping someone would humor his wild fantasy. But as he looked closer, he realized the farmer was steady, calm, and entirely serious. Every detail of his posture, every line on his face, spoke of a man who had thought this through. There was no hesitation, no panic, no uncertainty. He wasn't dreaming, he was planning, and the dealer couldn't deny that. Still, a small part of him wanted to laugh again, to dismiss this as an impossible demand and send the man on his way. The dealer rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He thought about the logistics. Tractors ready for sale were stored in different locations, some at the main warehouse, others at nearby delivery centers. Even if he could arrange for all 12 in a single day, it would take hours to inspect, prepare, and move them. There were forms to fill, financing to approve, transport to arrange. It wasn't just a matter of picking them off the lot. The dealer could feel the tension rising in his chest, a mixture of challenge and disbelief. He had never faced a customer like this, someone whose determination seemed to stretch beyond ordinary limits. Meanwhile, the farmer stood patiently, hands folded in front of him, watching the dealer's reaction with quiet confidence. He had expected doubt, even skepticism. That was part of the challenge. If the dealer had immediately agreed, the moment wouldn't have been nearly as satisfying. There was something almost theatrical about the dealer's hesitation, the way his brow furrowed, the way he leaned back and tried to calculate the possibilities. The farmer didn't speak, he didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to make the dealer reconsider, to plant the seed of possibility in his mind. The dealer exhaled slowly and tried to reason with the farmer. "Sir, I have to be honest with you. 12 tractors today, that's extremely unusual. I've been in this business for over 20 years, and I've never had a request like this. You have to understand, it's not just a matter of money. The machines are spread out, paperwork takes time, and even if we could pull it off, it would be a huge strain on our staff." He paused, hoping the farmer would see the difficulty and relent. Most people would, after all. Most people would back down when faced with such an obstacle. But the farmer didn't move. His eyes were steady, his voice calm when he spoke. "I understand the challenges, and I respect your concerns. But I have a plan. I'm ready to handle the paperwork, the transport, and the inspection. I didn't come here to argue. I came here to make it happen. If you help me, it will be done today. I promise you." There was no arrogance, only certainty. The dealer felt a flicker of something he hadn't expected, curiosity. Perhaps this man really could do it. As the dealer thought about the practicalities, he noticed a shift in the atmosphere around him. Employees, once quietly whispering, now leaned closer to catch every word. Mechanics paused mid-task, cleaners stopped dusting, and even a few customers in the showroom turned to see what was happening. The farmer's confidence had a magnetic effect, drawing attention and making people wonder if maybe, just maybe, the impossible could be achieved. The dealer's initial laughter faded, replaced by cautious consideration. He began to mentally run through possibilities, thinking of inventory locations, staff availability, and delivery schedules. Perhaps it wasn't as impossible as he had first believed. There was a tension in the room, thick and electric, as the dealer weighed his options. Could he say yes and risk chaos? Could he refuse and face disappointment, or worse, the embarrassment of underestimating someone with this level of determination? The farmer, standing patiently, seemed to sense the thought process without interrupting. It was as if he had anticipated every doubt, every question, every hesitation. The dealer realized he had never met someone so prepared, so fearless, so unwavering in pursuit of what they wanted. Finally, the dealer leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" he asked, his voice softer now, tinged with both disbelief and intrigue. The farmer nodded, simple and firm. That single nod changed the mood completely. Doubt lingered, yes, but so did possibility. The dealer realized he was no longer just dealing with a customer, he was witnessing determination, ambition, and courage in its purest form. The dealership, which had felt ordinary just minutes before, suddenly seemed alive with anticipation. Everyone present could sense it, something extraordinary was about to happen, and it all began with one man, one bold request, and one dealer's reluctant acknowledgement that perhaps he had underestimated the impossible. By late morning, news of the black farmer's extraordinary request had begun to spread like wildfire through the small town. What started as whispers in the dealership soon became animated conversations along the dusty streets. Shopkeepers paused in their work, leaning out of doorways to discuss the impossible demand. "Did you hear?" one grocer asked a customer while arranging sacks of flour. 12 tractors in a single day. Can you even imagine? The customer shook his head, wide-eyed, incredulous. Rumors traveled faster than the wind, fueled by excitement, disbelief, and a touch of admiration for the farmer's audacity. Children playing near the edges of the town square were the first to run toward the dealership, their laughter and shouts carrying across the streets. Word had reached them from older siblings and neighbors, the black farmer wants 12 John Deere tractors today. To the children, it sounded like a storybook adventure, something out of a fairy tale where a hero challenges the impossible and triumphs. They ran faster, eager to see the spectacle unfold, their energy infecting everyone nearby. Even adults found themselves caught up in the thrill, curiosity overcoming skepticism. As people approached the dealership, a small crowd began to form, gathering near the lot's entrance. Farmers from neighboring villages arrived on motorcycles, bicycles, and trucks, drawn by curiosity, gossip, or the sheer fascination of witnessing a bold move. Some laughed quietly to themselves, certain that the farmer was dreaming too big. Others watched with admiration, knowing the man's reputation for hard work and ingenuity. Everyone wanted to be there, even just to see if he would succeed or fail. The excitement was tangible, buzzing in the air like electricity, and it seemed to energize the dealership itself, which had been quiet just an hour earlier. Inside the dealership, the dealer noticed the growing crowd outside and felt a mixture of panic and intrigue. He had thought it would be a simple, private negotiation, a chance to process an unusual request. Instead, it had become a small spectacle. Employees peeked out of the windows, whispering among themselves, marveling at how quickly the news had traveled. Phones appeared in hands, snapping photos and sending messages to friends. The dealership was no longer just a place of business, it had become the center of a story that everyone wanted to witness, and everyone wanted to talk about. Meanwhile, the black farmer remained calm, almost serene, even as the buzz around him intensified. He had expected this reaction. In fact, he had anticipated it. The whispers, the wide-eyed stares, the skeptical laughter, it was all part of the drama, the energy, the momentum that would help him achieve his goal. He knew that boldness alone could not convince the dealer, but it could capture the imagination of everyone watching. People believed in extraordinary things when they felt them in the air, when they saw determination in action, and he was counting on that belief. Neighbors who had heard the rumors arrived on foot, carrying coffee, tools, or just curiosity. One farmer, leaning on a rusty hoe, shook his head and laughed, muttering to his companion, "Who even asks for 12 tractors at once? He must be joking." His companion shrugged, equally bemused but secretly impressed. Another group of onlookers, women chatting while hanging laundry nearby, stopped mid-task, craning their necks to see through the windows. It seemed impossible, yet everyone could feel that something remarkable was unfolding. As more people gathered, the excitement became contagious. Strangers exchanged stories, laughter echoed across the lot, and cameras captured moments that would soon circulate in the town for weeks. The children, unable to contain themselves, waved at the farmer and shouted questions. "Will you really get 12? How big is your farm?" The farmer smiled faintly, acknowledging their curiosity with a nod, but he remained focused on the dealer, knowing that the real work lay ahead. He didn't need to entertain the crowd, their attention was simply a testament to the boldness of his vision. Inside the dealership, the dealer felt the pressure mounting. The crowd outside, the whispers, the attention, it all reminded him that this was no ordinary request. If he refused, he would disappoint an entire community, and the story of the bold farmer would only grow louder. If he agreed, he risked logistical chaos, exhausting his staff and resources. Yet he could not ignore the confidence in the farmer's eyes, the way he stood tall amidst the growing crowd, unshaken by doubt or ridicule. Slowly, a thought began to form in the dealer's mind: maybe, just maybe, this was possible. Maybe this was the moment when determination could bend reality. The morning passed with a mixture of anticipation, skepticism, and awe. People continued to arrive, some out of curiosity, others out of admiration. The dealership, once quiet and routine, was now alive with energy, suspense, and excitement. Every passerby stopped, every employee whispered, every child laughed. And at the center of it all, the black farmer waited patiently, confident, calm, and ready to take the next step in what was becoming the most talked about day in the town's recent memory. Inside the dealership, the atmosphere had shifted from amusement to a mix of tension and curiosity. The dealer, once certain that the farmer's request was impossible, now sat at his desk with a furrowed brow, going over numbers and logistics in his mind. 12 tractors in one day was no small feat, and yet, as he studied the inventory lists, he realized that it might actually be possible. He leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against the desk thoughtfully. Every delivery location, every shipment schedule, every staff assignment suddenly seemed vital. The dealer was no longer laughing, he was calculating, planning, and preparing for what could become a historic day in the dealership's history. The first step was inventory. The dealer called the warehouse manager and asked him to check every location, near and far, for available tractors. Some had been set aside for future deliveries, others were already in storage, and a few were still being prepared for routine maintenance. The thought of gathering 12 fully operational tractors in a single day seemed daunting, but as the manager began confirming availability, the dealer felt a flicker of hope. Yes, it was going to be tight, but the machines could be gathered. The impossible might just be within reach. Next came transport. The dealer's mind raced through every truck, trailer, and forklift the dealership had at its disposal. Each tractor needed careful handling, and moving so many at once required precise coordination. Drivers were contacted immediately, their schedules adjusted, and backup vehicles were arranged. Employees were reassigned, some pulled from routine maintenance, others from sales duties, all to make the deliveries possible. The dealer could feel a growing energy in the dealership, a sense of challenge that made every staff member alert, focused, and strangely excited. What had started as a laughable request was quickly becoming a high-stakes operation. Paperwork was another hurdle. Financing had to be confirmed, registrations checked, and delivery forms completed. Normally, this process would take days, but the dealer realized he would have to streamline everything. He set aside other tasks, pulling assistants into a small meeting, explaining the urgency. "This is unusual," he told them, "but it's happening. We have to make it work." 12 tractors. Today. There was a mix of skepticism and excitement among the employees. Some shook their heads, certain it was impossible. Others smiled quietly, inspired by the dealer's urgency and the farmer's determination. The challenge had become contagious. Meanwhile, the farmer remained calm, walking among the rows of tractors, inspecting engines and tires with a practiced eye. He asked a few questions about specific models, the attachments available, and the best options for efficiency. His attention to detail impressed the staff. He wasn't just asking for a number, he was making informed decisions, demonstrating knowledge, experience, and a clear vision. The dealer, watching from his desk, felt a strange mix of respect and disbelief. He had never encountered a customer so prepared, so confident, and so relentless. By mid-morning, the plan was set in motion. Warehouse staff began preparing the tractors for transport, mechanics double-checked every engine, and drivers were briefed on the routes. The dealership buzzed with activity like never before. Phones rang constantly, messages were sent to suppliers, and delivery trucks were loaded and inspected. The dealer walked the lot repeatedly, coordinating each step, ensuring nothing was overlooked. He could see the excitement building outside as well, the crowd of townspeople and neighbors, still growing, pressed closer to the windows, eager to witness what was unfolding. Throughout it all, the farmer remained patient. He didn't rush, he didn't complain, and he didn't panic. Instead, he observed quietly, occasionally offering suggestions or confirming details. His calm presence seemed to anchor the dealership's energy, turning what could have been chaos into a carefully orchestrated operation. Employees found themselves inspired by his focus, and even the dealer began to feel a sense of pride. What had started as doubt was now transforming into possibility, and everyone involved sensed that they were part of something remarkable. As the hours passed, the preparations moved closer to completion. Tractors were lined up in order, paperwork was finalized, and drivers were ready to move. The dealer took a deep breath, realizing that the impossible request was about to become reality. Outside, the crowd waited in anticipation, unaware of the meticulous planning that had gone into making this day happen. Inside, the dealership had become a hive of organized chaos, all orchestrated by the combination of a bold farmer's vision and a dealer's growing respect for determination and preparation. By the time the first tractor was ready to be moved, the dealership had been transformed into a stage for an extraordinary event. The impossible had been planned, every detail accounted for, and the anticipation was nearly tangible. The dealer, the employees, and even the onlookers outside could sense that something unforgettable was about to happen. What had begun as a laughable request was now a story in motion, and everyone present knew they were about to witness the extraordinary. By early afternoon, the dealership was buzzing with energy, anticipation, and a hint of disbelief. The preparations were complete, the paperwork signed, and the drivers ready. 12 gleaming John Deere tractors were lined up in perfect rows, their green and yellow paint shining in the sunlight, reflecting off the polished metal and large, sturdy tires. The black farmer walked slowly down the line, his hands resting lightly on the hoods of the machines, inspecting each one with a careful eye. Every detail mattered to him, the engine's readiness, the tire's condition, the attachments available for immediate use. He didn't just want tractors, he wanted the best tractors, ready to work immediately. The dealer, who had laughed hours ago, now stood quietly at the edge of the lot, watching the scene unfold. There was a sense of awe in his expression. What had seemed impossible at first was now tangible, concrete, and standing in front of him. The dealer had prepared every detail meticulously, coordinating the staff, drivers, and warehouse teams, but he hadn't anticipated the way the farmer's calm presence and quiet determination would add a kind of gravity to the moment. Even the employees, who had doubted and whispered, now moved with a sense of pride, feeling like they were part of something extraordinary. The first tractor was loaded onto a flatbed truck with careful precision. The driver climbed in, checking the straps and securing the load, while the farmer gave a final nod of approval. One by one, the tractors were prepared, each movement deliberate, practiced, and flawless. Townspeople gathered outside the dealership, craning their necks to get a glimpse, their whispers growing into murmurs of astonishment. Cameras clicked, phones recorded, and children pointed excitedly, shouting, "There it is! 12 tractors!" The moment had become more than a delivery, it was a spectacle, a story that everyone wanted to witness. As the tractors began moving out of the lot, the black farmer followed closely, walking beside the first vehicle, inspecting each step of the process. His calm confidence seemed to reassure the drivers and staff, turning what could have been chaos into a carefully choreographed operation. The dealer, standing near the office, shook his head in amazement. He had never seen such focus, such determination, and such meticulous attention to detail from a customer. The laughter and doubt of the morning had been replaced by admiration and respect. Neighbors and onlookers cheered as the tractors left the dealership one by one, driving toward the farmer's land. Some waved, some clapped, and others whispered in disbelief, still unable to comprehend that a single man could order and receive 12 tractors in one day. The excitement was contagious. Even the most skeptical farmers began nodding appreciatively, understanding that they were witnessing a rare combination of planning, boldness, and determination that few ever achieve. When the last tractor rolled off the lot, the black farmer stood at the edge of the dealership, watching the convoy move down the dusty road. The sun highlighted the green paint of the machines, the hum of engines filling the air. There was a quiet pride in his stance, a sense of satisfaction that came not just from acquiring the tractors but from making what everyone thought was impossible become reality. The dealer, who had spent hours coordinating the operation, approached him cautiously. "I have to admit," he said, shaking his head, "I didn't think it could be done. But here they are. 12 tractors. All today." The farmer smiled faintly, nodding in acknowledgement. The journey back to the farm became a parade of astonishment. People along the road stopped their chores, leaning on fences or pausing in doorways to watch the convoy pass. Children ran alongside, waving, and even animals seemed to sense the excitement in the air. By the time the tractors reached the farm, word had spread further. Neighbors and friends gathered, watching as 12 brand new John Deere tractors were carefully unloaded and lined up on the farmland, ready for work. The sight was breathtaking, a bold dream realized in vivid, living color. Once the tractors were all in place, the farmer walked along the line, inspecting each machine one final time. He climbed onto the first tractor, starting the engine with ease, the powerful hum echoing across the fields. One by one, the other tractors were tested, engines roaring, tires rolling over the soil, demonstrating readiness for the work ahead. The dealer, standing nearby, shook his head again, smiling in disbelief. The audacity of the request, the calm precision, and the successful delivery had transformed a simple business transaction into a legendary story. By the end of the day, the sun was beginning to set, casting golden light across the field. The 12 tractors stood proudly, a testament to determination, planning, and vision. The dealer, employees, and townspeople all recognized that they had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would be remembered for years to come. And at the center of it all, the black farmer stood quietly, surveying the scene with satisfaction. What had started as a bold request had now become a reality, leaving everyone astonished, inspired, and eager to tell the story of the day when 12 John Deere tractors arrived in a single afternoon. By the time the last of the 12 John Deere tractors was parked neatly on the black farmer's sprawling land, a crowd had gathered that seemed larger than anyone could have imagined. Word traveled fast in small towns, and now people from neighboring villages, curious locals, and even passers-by from farther away had come to witness what had become a legendary event. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the field, and the 12 tractors gleamed as if they were trophies, each machine standing proud and ready. The sight was so unexpected, so extraordinary, that even the most skeptical townspeople were left silent for a moment, taking it all in. Children ran from one tractor to another, pointing excitedly, their laughter echoing across the fields. They climbed on tires, ran alongside the engines, and shouted questions they could barely articulate. How did he get all of these in one day? Are they really going to work on the farm now? Their energy was contagious, drawing smiles from parents and neighbors alike. Adults, many of whom had first doubted the farmer, stood in astonishment, shaking their heads, whispering to one another about the audacity and determination it must have taken to make this day happen. The murmurs quickly grew into conversations, then into excited declarations, and finally into cheers of admiration. The dealer, who had spent the day coordinating the deliveries, walked among the crowd, observing their reactions. Even he felt a mixture of pride and disbelief. What had started as a laughable, impossible request had now transformed into a story the entire town would retell for years. People were taking photos, recording videos, and telling friends and neighbors to come see the incredible sight before it disappeared into legend. "I've never seen anything like this," said one farmer, tipping his hat in respect. 12 tractors, in a single day. "I didn't think it was possible, but here they are." News of the event spread quickly through informal channels, and soon reporters from the local newspaper arrived, cameras and notebooks in hand. They interviewed the farmer, the dealer, and a few amazed bystanders. Everyone wanted to capture the details, the reactions, and the story behind this audacious accomplishment. The farmer, ever humble yet quietly proud, explained simply that he had a vision and believed in making it happen. It wasn't about showing off, he told a reporter, smiling faintly. It was about preparation, persistence, and believing that what seems impossible can actually happen if you plan and work for it. His words resonated with everyone present, adding meaning to what they had just witnessed. Neighbors approached, offering congratulations and sharing astonished glances. Some asked practical questions: how he planned to use all 12 tractors immediately, how he managed the finances, and how he had organized such a feat without anyone else noticing. Others were simply amazed, shaking their heads, laughing, and telling their own stories of times when they had doubted the impossible. The farmer answered with patience, humility, and a quiet confidence that made everyone feel that they were seeing something truly remarkable. The excitement didn't end with the first onlookers. People from nearby farms, hearing the news over the phone or seeing the smoke of activity in the distance, began to arrive, drawn by curiosity, inspiration, and the human fascination with boldness and achievement. The crowd grew larger, the conversations louder, and the admiration more palpable. Children clambered onto small hills to get a better view, and adults took turns walking slowly among the tractors, marveling at the engineering, size, and coordination it had taken to get all 12 delivered in one day. It wasn't just a delivery, it had become a spectacle, a lesson in determination, and a story that would be told over and over. Even the dealer, normally reserved and businesslike, couldn't hide his awe. He shook the farmer's hand firmly and said, "I have to admit, I underestimated you. You didn't just ask for 12 tractors. You made it happen. Today, you've shown all of us what determination, planning, and confidence can achieve." The farmer smiled faintly, acknowledging the praise but without arrogance. The real reward, he knew, was not the admiration itself, but the proof that daring to dream big and acting on it could transform even the most impossible ideas into reality. By the time evening approached, the crowd began to disperse, leaving the 12 tractors lined up on the farm as silent monuments to a bold vision. Conversations lingered in doorways, over fences, and in small shops long after the people had left. The story of the day a single farmer ordered 12 John Deere tractors in one afternoon would ripple through the town for months, inspiring others to dream bigger, take bolder actions, and believe in the power of persistence. And at the center of it all, the black farmer stood quietly, surveying his land, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment, satisfaction, and a rare pride that comes from achieving the extraordinary. As the sun began its slow descent behind the horizon, the black farmer stood in the middle of his land, surveying the 12 John Deere tractors lined up like soldiers ready for duty. The golden light bounced off the green paint, highlighting each machine's polished metal and sturdy tires, casting long shadows across the freshly tilled soil. The day had started as a simple, audacious idea in the farmer's mind, but now it had transformed into something extraordinary, not just the tractors, but the story, the spectacle, and the inspiration it had sparked across the town. He took a deep breath, feeling a mix of satisfaction, relief, and quiet pride. This was more than a successful transaction, it was proof that boldness, preparation, and persistence could achieve the impossible. The crowd that had gathered earlier slowly dispersed, leaving the farmer alone with the dealer and a few close neighbors who had stayed behind to witness the final moments. Conversation still buzzed in the air, even as people walked away, sharing their astonishment with anyone they met along the way. The children waved from a distance, still excited and full of questions about the tractors, while adults nodded at one another, shaking their heads in admiration. It was clear that this day would be remembered, not just for the tractors themselves, but for the daring vision and determination it took to make them a reality in a single afternoon. The dealer, who had spent the day orchestrating logistics, paperwork, and delivery schedules, approached the farmer cautiously, a mixture of awe and respect evident in his expression. "I have to be honest," he said, pausing as he looked at the line of tractors. "When you first walked in, I thought this was impossible. I laughed at the idea, honestly. But today you've shown all of us something remarkable. You didn't just want 12 tractors, you believed in it, and you made it happen." The farmer smiled faintly, nodding in acknowledgement, but there was no boastfulness in his demeanor. His satisfaction came not from recognition, but from the quiet proof that determination combined with careful planning could achieve what others thought was impossible. As the evening shadows lengthened, the farmer walked along the line of tractors, checking each one, imagining the work that would soon be done. Each machine represented a promise of increased productivity, efficiency, and progress for the land he had nurtured with sweat and patience over the years. More than that, each tractor represented the power of audacity, the courage to dream beyond limits, and the reward of trusting in one's preparation and planning. The tractors themselves were tools, but the lesson they symbolized extended far beyond farming. It was about life, ambition, and the human spirit. Neighbors who had lingered behind gathered around the farmer, asking questions, sharing stories of their own struggles and aspirations. Many spoke of times they had doubted themselves or hesitated to take bold steps, inspired by what they had just witnessed. Children listened wide-eyed, absorbing the lesson that courage, focus, and persistence could make the impossible possible. Some adults whispered to each other, quietly making plans to tackle challenges they had previously thought insurmountable. The farmer's boldness had become contagious, planting seeds of confidence, ambition, and hope that would grow long after the tractors had been put to work. The dealer watched all of this unfold, realizing that this day was about far more than a business transaction. It had become a story of inspiration, a reminder that sometimes, the ordinary rules of possibility could be bent with vision, courage, and careful planning. He looked at the farmer and said quietly, "I think everyone here learned something today. Maybe more than just about tractors." The farmer nodded again, this time letting a small, satisfied smile break through. The recognition of achievement wasn't necessary, but seeing the ripple effect his bold action had created brought a sense of fulfillment that words could barely describe. As the sky turned shades of pink and orange, the tractors stood in quiet alignment, ready for work, while the farmer took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the early mornings, the long nights, the broken equipment, and the endless planning. He remembered the doubts, both his own and those of others, and realized that the true victory wasn't just in receiving 12 tractors in one day, it was in proving that audacious goals, careful preparation, and unwavering persistence could turn even the most unlikely dreams into reality. It was a lesson for himself, for the community, and for anyone who might hear this story in the years to come. As darkness fell and the lights of the nearby town began to glow, the farmer stood silently, surrounded by the machines he had dared to dream about. The moral of the day was clear: boldness paired with preparation can achieve extraordinary results. Doubt may come from others, and obstacles may appear impossible, but courage, determination, and careful planning can turn the impossible into the remarkable. The story of the black farmer and his 12 John Deere tractors would live on, not just as a tale of audacity, but as a reminder that dreams, no matter how big, are always worth pursuing.